Hello, friends. This is Mac Payne here, the founder, owner, and operator of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast, where we bring you news about the Vietnam War and the brave veterans who served there, as told to you by yours truly, a Vietnam veteran. On this short video, I am here to give you the news. I have just published another podcast episode. It is episode 3223. It has to do with a secret weapon used in Vietnam. It seems like there were numerous secret weapons used in Vietnam. This one has to do with weather. That's right. We were using the weather as a secret weapon in Vietnam. It was done under the auspices of Operation Popeye. The episode on the podcast I just published tells all about Operation Popeye and what they were trying to do with the weather to win the war. Apparently, it didn't work all that well because the war continued. When you listen to this podcast episode, you're going to be amazed at what we tried to do to use the weather as a weapon against the North Vietnamese. On paper, it sounded pretty smart. There were other things that we did in Vietnam. On paper, sounded pretty smart. Take, for instance, the use of agricultural herbicides in that war. Agricultural herbicides such as Agent Orange, Agent Blue, and all the other agents we used over there. It sounded like a good idea to go over there and spray Vietnam with these herbicides to get rid of all the cover that the Vietnamese and NVA used, and also to get rid of their food supply. That sounded like a real good idea on paper. Unfortunately, in practice, it had a few hangovers that weren't too good. A lot of Americans died from Agent Orange related diseases. Lots of Vietnamese passed away as a result of it. Many still suffer to this day from the effects of the use of herbicides in Vietnam. Luckily, Operation Popeye did not leave us with all the hangovers of Agent Orange. In a way, it was rather harmless, which you'll find out when you listen to the podcast episode. I think you'll find it very interesting to see what we tried to do in the Vietnam War using weather as a weapon. It's all right there on the latest episode of my podcast, episode number 3223. I highly encourage you to go over and listen to it if you care anything about the Vietnam War. And of course, I've made it easy for you. All you've got to do is go down below this 1965 vintage Philco TV set. Click on the link to the Vietnam Veteran News podcast. That is VietnamVeteranNews.com. When you click on that link, it'll take you directly to the podcast and the episode, and you can discover all about Operation Popeye, where we used weather as a weapon to fight the North Vietnamese. I think you'll find it quite educational. In some ways, it might be a little pathetic, but it's an interesting story we should know about, primarily because we need to know history so we don't make the same mistakes in the future. Although it seems in some cases where we do know the history, we continue to make the same mistakes. That's why we need to know as much about it as we can. So do yourself a favor. Go down, click on the link, and listen to this podcast, episode number 3223, about Operation Popeye in the Vietnam War. Do that, and you'll help stamp out ignorance, and you'll also learn more about the war and how we should function in the future, because it gives some pretty good tips in there about what we should do in the future when it comes to weather and how we can use weather to our advantage. So that's what it's all about. And that is my message to you on this short video. So again, do yourself a favor, go click on the link and check it out. If for some reason you cannot access the link to the episode on your device, no worries. All you've got to do is go to VietnamVeteranNews.com. Go there and you will be taken directly to the podcast website and episode number 3223 about Operation Popeye, where we use the weather as a weapon of war. It is a very interesting story. So with that, I'll be ending this short video where I told you about a podcast episode that describes Operation Popeye. You don't want to miss it. Again, thank you for listening, and we'll talk soon.